Welcome to the YouTube home of Sparrow Woodworks Canada, Canada's newest YouTube woodworker. This show is sponsored by my family and my spare time. Today, I want to show you how I carved a half-whole sailboat as an applique, and then applied that to a hand-carved sign made for a client this past Christmas. The client requested a sign that would have the name of her father's sailboat on it, along with the sailboat carved into it. Here you can see the name as it appears on the side of the sailboat. I matched the font and the capitalization scheme in the design. The design process is both fun and tedious. It is time spent at the computer so that I can send designs back and forth with the client. My wife often offers suggestions as well. I love when the design gets approval because that is when it's time to get to work. Here you can see the process of tracing the design out onto the wood. I carved most of my signs from pine. I am sure there are better and worse woods, but as my first carving instructor stated, pine is fine. I take some steps to ensure that it'll last for years outside as well. Here the design is traced out. I have left the sailboat, which will be to the right, off for now. I wasn't sure how I was going to carve that yet, but I have some time to mull that over in my mind as I carve the letters. The first step for me in letter carving is to draw out my stop cuts. I use a ruler to draw in where they will be. Then, for long straight stop cuts, I take my largest chisel and use a mallet to make them. You have to hit the cross grain lines much harder than those running with the grain. I use a small chisel on curves and a much smaller chisel on serifs or the ends of the letters. Sometimes I'll use a carving knife to make the stop cuts in curved sections. Once all the stop cuts are completed, I can finally get starting to getting some wood chips on the floor. When carving, I usually go over the letters in about 3 passes. The first pass is from near the line towards the stop cut. Sometimes not so near the line if it's a larger space and there's more wood to remove. The second pass is usually to just barely remove the pencil line. This makes it so I do not have to go back and sand off any pencil marks. This is really tedious. When I trace out my lines, I have them designed to be carved out for this very reason. The final pass is usually the ends of the letters, and these take more time and care than the middle sections. When I am carving, I tend to do the first pass on all of the letters, the hogging out stage, and then do the cleanup pass on all as well. And then finally I do all the ends of the letters at the same time. I think carving in this fashion helps me be more consistent across the whole process. Now that I have the letters all completed, I really have to get back to that sailboat. I had 2 choices with the sailboat. I could either carve it in size like the letters, or carve it from a separate piece of wood as an applique. The client didn't specify, and frankly I didn't ask, but I wanted to take on the challenge of carving it in the round, and I figured that if I messed this up badly, I could always draw the sailboat out on the sign and carve it out like as a shadow or outline. It wouldn't be as nice, but it would fit in with the accepted design. So I traced out the design on a scrap piece of pine and took it over to the bandsaw. Making it in 2 pieces really helped get into some of the tight places. Now I noticed that I really need to cut the sail in half, so I very carefully headed back to the bandsaw and resawed this small piece of wood. Carving the sailboat wasn't too eventful. I really like the Japanese detail carving tools from Lee Valley. They really came in handy when carving the sailboat. And my favorite carving tool of all time is the shallow gouge. This really helped round out the sails and add the texture you see. And here you can see the final results for the sailboat. I was really happy with this, so it was time to go back to the sign. I use a deck sealer with stain on most of my projects. I figure if you can walk on it, it should be perfect even for wood that's just hanging around. So the cedar stain adds a little bit of color, which makes the pine more attractive as well. Usually add about 2 coats. Once this is dry, I painted the letters with exterior black paint. And I debated about painting the sailboat the same color, but my wife really objected. So I asked the client, and they agreed with my wife, so the sailboat just got the same cedar stain sealer as well. Once the sailboat was epoxied on, I sprayed on 4 coats of exterior clear varathane, and then the sign is finished. And here's the results. Thanks for watching my very first video. Please leave any comments below, and I'm looking forward to hearing from you. Thank you.